Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to August 31st, 2020 Community Development Block Grant Committee meeting. Due to an evolving situation with COVID-19 and the health recommendations from LA County Health Department, the commission meetings will be available to public electronically. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting. This meeting can be viewed on a local cable, Charter Cables Channel 6, and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. You may also stream online throughout the website, Glendale, California.gov. By scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the web page and selecting the live streaming, which in the third icon from the left. For the public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Please do not call in advance of the agenda item. With this being said, may I have a roll call, please?
Committee members Garibian.
Here.
Kazarian is absent. Ramirez is absent. Vice Chair Armenian.
Present.
Chair Avedisian.
Present. What's next, please?
The agenda for the August 31st, 2020 special meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee special meeting was posted on or before Friday, August 28, 2020 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Next is item 2, minutes. At A is approval of the minutes of the February 21st, 2020 CDBG Advisory Committee special meeting.
Could I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved. I'll second that.
Moved and second. Roll call, please.
Committee members Garibian.
Yes.
Kazarian is absent. Ramirez is absent. Vice Chair Armenian.
Yes.
Chair Avedisian.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, let's see, where are we?
Item 3 is oral communications.
Do we have any calls? No calls? Okay, oral communications is closed. Move on to item 4, action item.
Yes, at A is reprogramming of $219,004 returned from fiscal year 2019-2020 CDBG Community Capital Improvement Project, YWCA Lexington Building Number 1 project. One is a motion providing direction to staff on reprogramming of $219,004 returned from fiscal year 2019-2020 CDBG Community Capital Improvement Project, YWCA Lexington Building Number 1 project.
Okay, do we have any comments, questions?
Chair Avedisian, members of the committee, we do have a presentation prepared for you. If I could just wait for it to come up, give us a second. So in fiscal year 1920, we had the YWCA of Glendale Lexington Building Capital Improvement Project, which was funded in the amount of $219,004. It was for a renovation of a Lexington Building Number 1 facility improvements, which included replacement of the basement electrical room, replacement of first floor Regency room ceiling tiles, conversion of their first floor women's and men's restroom to accessible to ADA, replacement of the first floor corridor to remove and replace frames and doors, to replace the existing height of the stairway, provide some HVAC improvements, and provide new rigid duct distribution for all offices on the second floor. If you recall, we funded this project in the amount of $219,000. On July 27th, staff received notice from the YWCA that they were going to be returning the funds because they weren't going to be able to spend the money. They were going to, based on their experience and the number of projects they had done, and they felt that it would be best to change the scope of work, and they would no longer be using CDBG grant funds to do the project that they originally were funded for. Normally, when we have return funds for CIP, CDBG-CIP funds, they can be reprogrammed for other CIP projects. They normally can't be used for admin or public social service projects. With COVID-19, the pandemic, and the CARES Act funds, there was also some guidance that was released that allows for some flexibility in the way that we program funds in 1920 and 2021. So CARES Act flexibilities, basically CARES Act was allocated to be able to spend on projects for prevention, preparation, and response to the COVID-19 pandemic. With the flexibilities that were provided in the CARES Act, HUD eliminated the 15% cap that we have for funding public social service projects. Normally, based on the total amount that were funded, only 15% could be allocated to public social services. But with the CARES Act, that cap is removed. The basically allowing cities the flexibility to spend more money on funding social services and help address anything that is related to COVID-19 and the need for additional services as it relates to addressing the pandemic. So staff has identified some options for the committee on how to reprogram those funds, and we'll spend some time going through the several options and then seek to you to give us advice and recommendation on how we should reprogram the $219,000. The first option that the committee has is to issue a request for proposal in the current fiscal year in 2021 to public social services community organizations for services related to COVID-19. So within this option, we could either issue the request for proposal to all public social services with all public social service community organizations, or we could issue the RFP only to currently HUD-funded public social service community organizations for expanded services related to COVID-19. The second option that we have is to apply the funds towards the 2021-2022 program planning year and do an RFP for CIP projects. The third option is to program it towards a city CIP or a city social service program, or it could be a combination of any of the options above. And we'll go through each one individually. So the first recommendation, which is 1A, is to issue the RFP, the full $219,004 in the current fiscal year in 2021 to currently HUD-funded public social service community organizations for expanded services related to COVID-19. Community organizations may apply for funds through an RFP and demonstrate the need for COVID-19 related services. Based on the evaluation criteria, agencies that apply for expanded services and programs that already exist will have higher consideration in comparison to agencies who are proposing brand new programs that have yet to be implemented. So for example, if an agency is already providing a service that they are funding themselves, could apply for funding for the current program to either expand that program or to help fund it going forward, because they've been funding it with currently their own funds. Those programs, based on the evaluation criteria staff is proposing, would get higher priority because it's already a program that's running and ready, has been implemented. With the short amount of time that we have to spend the funds, a brand new program, which has not been operated by the agencies, would take longer to set up, and it might impact their ability to spend the money. So examples of COVID-19 eligible activities include childcare services. We all know that childcare has become a big issue with the school districts being closed and on remote learning. Food pantries for families who might need assistance, meal grocery delivery to seniors, and counseling services related to COVID-19. So these are some examples of COVID-19 eligible activities that HUD has identified. There's a lot more. These are just some examples. The second recommendation is to save the $219,000 right now. So don't RFP it, don't spend it. Save it and combine it with the CIP funds that we will get next program planning year in 21-22 and issue an RFP at that time. So issuing an RFP in the current fiscal year in 2021 for CIP is not really realistic, as it would take too long to develop a proposal, and a 1-week turnaround on the proposal is really not realistic. We don't have that much time to go out and do a 2-3 week RFP and allow the agencies to come up with projects. So the recommendation is to save it if we want to spend it on CIP and combine it with next year's funding. So the options that staff doesn't recommend, but it's still available as an option, is the first recommendation, which was 1B, which was issuing the RFP for public social services to new community organizations. So this is issuing it to not, the first option was to issue it to HUD-funded public social service agencies. This option would be issuing it to all, even new agencies. Staff does not recommend issuing it to new agencies because of the timeline to submit the proposals is short, and for somebody who's not familiar with the CDBG process, that could be a challenge and not enough time for them to gather all the paperwork and all of the requirements that are needed in order to apply for CDBG funds. Vetting through the new agencies to ensure the requirements are met would, again, be a challenge. Contract execution, the process to issue a brand new contract versus amend an existing contract would take longer. And then, of course, the expenditure deadline for the funds is June 30th, 2021, which is the end of the current program planning year. So it would be unrealistic for us to look, staff feels it would be unrealistic for us to expect a brand new agency who's not familiar with the HUD requirements to implement a new project, be able to enter into an agreement, have all their documents submitted and accurate, and implement the program in order to get funded by June 30th. The third recommendation, which was allocating money to a city CIP project or social service program. This is an option, but at this time, staff does not feel that there are any city projects that we really need to spend the funds on. We may need additional funds to continue a childcare program that we are currently running, but at this time, the program is funded through December 18th, which is basically through the end of December, because after December 18th, the schools go out on on a break for the holiday. So right now, that childcare program is funded, but should the schools not open back up and should the schools not take in the children after December, the city will need additional funds in order to continue offering childcare services to parents who need to work. So essential workers or even non-essential workers that have to return back to work, childcare has been a challenge. So right now the city has pods that we've opened up where the children come to the city for day camp style care, where we ensure that the children are logging into their Google Classrooms or whatever method their school is using, and it's really they're not teaching, they're just ensuring that the child is logging in and following along with the teacher and doing the assignment. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what the program is. But the program right now is fully funded through December. So staff's recommendation is to go with is basically one of the three. So either to go with RFPing the full $219,000 to a currently funded, HUD-funded public social service community organization for expanded services related to COVID-19 in the current fiscal year, to save the full amount, the $219,000, and combine it with CIP funds in 2021-2022 program planning year and RFP it out to public social service agencies for CIP projects, or any combination of 1 and 3. So if you want to RFP out a portion of it and save a portion of it for CIP next year, that's also an option. The implementation timeline for the RFP, so should the committee choose to RFP out the full amount or some variation of that amount for public social service agencies, we're looking at issuing the RFP to current agencies and on September 1st, so tomorrow essentially, we would be releasing that RFP, and the RFP is part of the packet that was submitted to you. And there would be a 1-week turnaround. So on September 8th, we would receive the proposals from the agencies. Between September 8th and the 10th, staff would review and evaluate the proposals and send out the staff analysis to the agencies, identifying their strengths and weaknesses. On September 14th, the community agencies would respond to the staff analysis. On the 15th, staff would provide the proposals received to the committee for your review. And we have tentatively scheduled a meeting for September 18, or identify the date for a meeting to make funding recommendations. So you would review the proposals from the 15th through the 18th, and then on the 18th, we would meet back again for your recommendations on which programs to fund. Between the September 19th and the 23rd, there would be a 5-day comment period by way of email, mail, or telephone. The 29th, the City Council would review and approve the recommendations as proposed by the committee. And then between September 30th and October 4th, we would have another 5-day public comment period for the 2019 Annual Action Plan Substantial Amendment, which would basically include the recommendations from the committee and confirmed by the council. And then on October 6th, we would submit the Annual Action Plan, the Substantial Amendment, to HUD. This concludes my presentation. So staff's here to answer any questions that you may have and take feedback from the committee on which option you prefer.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, very detailed. Actually, I have a couple of questions or clarifications to just make sure public understands it well as we do. When you suggest the HUD-funded and current agencies, meaning the organizations and agencies that these 2019-2020 have received funds from the city or the CDBG committee, not necessarily all organizations that maybe in the past 10 years past they've received any funds. We're talking about the current agencies that they are actually their documentations are pretty current and everything is actual right now that we have in hand, not just revamping the process. Correct?
Chair Avedisian, members of the CDBG Advisory Committee, that is correct. It is the fiscal year 2020-2021 candidates that have agreements with HUD agreements, CDBG, and otherwise. So HUD agreements that are in fiscal year 2020-2021 are eligible to apply for this RFP.
Thank you. The other question that I had, jumping before the committee members, was the 5-day comment period, and that would be just the public or the organizations also, obviously, right? That they can first 5 days comment period after the committee's suggestion. That would be the organizations or any general public that want to make a comment or suggestions or whatnot, correct?
Chair Avedisian, members of the Advisory Committee, just to give you a little bit of a background, we have a citizenship participation plan within our agreement with HUD. It's part of our annual action plan, our consolidated plan. And part of that is traditionally it's supposed to be a 30-day comment period, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, again, with flexibilities, it's a 5-day comment period. It has been reduced in fiscal year 1920 and in fiscal year 2021. So yes, it gives 5 days to respond via telephone, email, or by way of mail. So the hearings are now canceled. In-person hearings are completely canceled. So these flexibilities do apply for this RFP as well.
Okay. We will also have, or the organization will have an opportunity on September 18th when the committee is meeting, or actually September 18th, when the committee is meeting, the organizations that planning or have applied to the RFPs will have the opportunity to comment or answer questions, the committee questions, correct?
Correct. Chair Avedisi, members of the committee, yes, it will follow the same process. They won't physically be here possibly. They'll just be
Sure.
WebExing in. But yes, we will follow the same process. They'll come in, you'll interview them in order to make your recommendations.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions. Committee members, you have any questions, comments?
I have some questions to build, if I could build upon your questions. I just wanted to, may I go forward, Chair?
Go ahead, Mr. Armenian.
When we say current organizations that are currently funded by CDBG, we mean regardless of whether they are funded on social service or capital programs. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Chair Avedisian, Committee Member Armenian, yes. It doesn't matter whether it's CIP or Public Social Services, and the fact that we say HUD funded, it could also be homeless services through our ESG program. So even if the agency might not be funded through HUD, through CDBG, if they're getting homeless funding through ESG, that also applies, or even through the continuum of care.
And if I may add one other thing, for CIP projects, they don't have to demonstrate COVID need. They're CIP projects. They would be eligible regardless of COVID pandemic.
Yeah, regardless of what the program is.
Correct.
Okay, the currently funded program. Okay, then the next question is that from a timing perspective, any recipient of these funds, assuming the timeline that you outlined, which I think the decision kind of is verified by October, they have until June of 2021 to execute that program using those funds, correct?
Again, if I may add, Vice Chair Armenian, members of the committee, that is correct for public social services programs. They have until June 30th, 2021. But if it is a CIP program that's currently funded and seeking additional funds, they are not bound by that time frame.
Yes, but the exemption to use the capital funds for a social service fund, which in this case has to be COVID-related, a COVID-related social service fund, right?
Correct.
Okay.
If they're
So, and to use that, it has to be, the program has to be executed between whenever we make the final decision to June 2021, in that time frame. No.
Chair Avedisian, Vice Chair Armenian, basically, if the committee chooses to RFP it out for public social services and the program that's funded is a social service program, then yes. If we were to save the funds and RFP it out for CIP next year, then that timeline does not apply.
I realize that. I was specifically referring to if we reprogram it for social service now, as opposed to deferring it into the next funding cycle as a CIP.
Correct. So if it's this funding cycle, then yes, by June 30th, 2021, they have to expend the funds.
Okay. And then if we RFP it, let's say we take that option where we're RFPing the entire amount and proposals that come back are not, either they don't add up to the full amount, or we don't think they're all worthy of being funded, and so there's money left on the table. Would that balance be deferred back into the CIP program for the next funding cycle?
Chair Avedisian, Vice Chair Armenian, yes. So if the full amount is not allocated to a project in the next RFP cycle, whatever is remaining will basically be saved for next year's CIP pot.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Caribbean, go ahead.
I know a lot of the questions were answered already, but the question I have for the following year, if we do push it to next year, and next year we don't get enough CIP to fund, what happens? Is this going to be calculated separately, or is going to just go to the total and be treated as a 21-22 year? So meaning if I push everything for next year, but we don't fund all the CIPs, what happens?
If I'm understanding you correctly, Committee Member Garibian, that money would be unencumbered. So if we have money left over, we would have to figure out a way, it'll go right into the line of credit. But CDBG is very strict on timeliness, so we need to spend down the funds that we receive each year to show that we are using it for capital improvement projects. So to answer your question, it should be basically given to either city or community agency projects. We'd have to come up with some ideas for those for next year.
Okay, so if we don't get enough requests for CIP of next year's plus the 219, we can allocate the difference to city projects or goes to city, so we don't lose the money. That's what my concern.
Correct. We prefer not to keep it unencumbered. We'd like to encumber it to a project.
Okay, all right. That's pretty much my question. The rest makes sense, everything else.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we're looking for a motion, suggestions, if you want to start. Any motions on any of the items? 1, 2, 3? What
I'll
would
make a
be
motion
committee
that
will?
we RFP the full amount.
Just,
That would be number 1, the staff suggested. Correct?
Vice Chair Armenian, just to clarify, are you recommending that we RFP it, which is recommendation 1A, to currently HUD-funded public social service agencies?
Yes. Yes, I recommend that. So I make a motion to RFP the full amount to currently HUD-funded organizations.
Thank you.
So meaning, just to clarify, I don't know, my mic is on all the time. Just to clarify, so this is the one that they have until September 8th? Is that what the date is? The time for them to apply for?
Yes.
September 8th, right?
Yes.
All right, just to one wish. And then Mr. Armenian mentioned, if we don't get it, then we can allocate the rest for the next year.
Correct. I need a second. Do you second the motion, Mr. Garibian?
You know, just want to second that the following way. Just want to make sure it's on the record. Because why not? If we have the money and people have the agencies will have the opportunity to do so, why not? We'll give them that opportunity to do so. Doesn't hurt, especially with today's COVID situation. God knows if anyone needs any penny, especially some of the homeless or the after those, I don't know, even those after school, because there's no school. So those agencies who did have after school programs like Red Cross and all that stuff, are they in business in that portion of there? So whatever those agencies would work would be great, and if not, we won't lose the money. That's great too. So I'll second that.
Okay, motion and seconded. We have a motion and seconded. Can I have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Committee members Garibian,
Yes.
Kazarian, and Ramirez are absent. Vice Chair Armenian,
Yes.
Chair Avedisian.
Yes. Thank you. What's next, please?
Next is 4B, Program Planning Schedule for the fiscal year 2021-2022 CDBG, ESG, and Home Annual Action Plan. One is a motion to review and approve the Program Planning Schedule for the fiscal year 2021-2022 CDBG, ESG, and Home Annual Action Plan.
Good afternoon, Chair Avedisian, members of the committee and staff. Maggie Kavarian here to present the program planning schedule for the upcoming fiscal year 2021-2022 CDBG, ESG, and Home Annual Action Plan. We've actually already started our program planning for next year's CDBG cycle, and a needs assessment will be finalized where staff collects and analyzes data from the American Community Survey and updates the census data on poverty, demographics, and other dimensions. Part of this assessment includes a community meeting, which is traditionally held in the fall, inviting residents of the opportunity to tell us how they would like federal funding spent. But due to the COVID pandemic, this meeting has been altered to include 3 new platforms for residents to provide input, which is email comments, a virtual public meeting, and the option of, or the option of telephone conference call. The program planning schedule also includes today's meeting, in which the committee reviews the program planning calendar. On September 9th, we are hosting our third annual CDBG open house for prospective applicants wanting to learn more about the upcoming CDBG funding cycle. This will also take place as a virtual workshop rather than the traditional in-person style workshop. On October 12th, the committee will return for a special meeting to select a new chair and vice chair and approve a funding allocation plan. We are still awaiting some news from HUD to see what our funding estimates might be, and we'll get you those numbers at that meeting. On November 3rd, staff will take the committee approved funding allocation plan and the RFP to City Council and the Housing Authority for final approval. And on November 13th, staff will publish an RFP notice and issuance to community agencies for the new funding opportunity in 2021-2022. Staff will also conduct a technical assistance workshop on December 3rd to assist agencies who are applying for funding. Again, this is tentatively scheduled as a virtual meeting, and we'll have more feedback once we get news about the pandemic. On December 30th will be the deadline for agencies to submit their RFP proposals to staff. And in the month of January 2021, staff begins to review and do an analysis of the submitted proposals and forwards the reviewed packets to the CDBG Advisory Committee by February 8th. And on the 26th, we'll be meeting back here again for an advisory committee meeting, which is a full day of interviews and community agencies to develop funding recommendations. We are still evaluating how we'll do that, so we don't want to look too far ahead into the future, but we will let the committee know how that will be done in that month. We have also scheduled a tentative date of March 1st for an additional advisory committee meeting, and this is dependent on the number of proposals we receive. We usually complete the interviews in one day. I know it's a very long day, but we usually get it done in one day, so we always add an extra day just to be safe. We have also set aside a public hearing date on March 25th, 2021 at the Pacific Community Center to receive feedback on funding recommendations by the committee. And again, due to COVID pandemic, we may use alternate platforms for receiving comments. We're scheduled to go to City Council on April 27th to approve the final funding recommendations, and we'll hopefully submit the final action plan to HUD by May 31st of 2021. If there are any questions related to the program planning schedule, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have one question just to clarify. Of course, this is not, it doesn't show on your action plan, the September 18th, this program, basically the September 5th to the September 18th process is not shown on the schedule, so that's an addition to an amendment to this program.
Chair Avedissian, that is correct. Because the committee had not voted yet on it, we couldn't include it in this program planning schedule.
Okay.
But we will send out a schedule for you all on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? No questions? Okay. What's next, please?
Next is,
yeah.
actually, that's required, this is an action item, Chair Avedissian.
Yes, I need a motion to approve the schedule, timeline.
A motion to approve.
The Caribbean motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Armenian. Can I have a roll call, please?
Committee members Caribbean,
Yes.
Kazarian and Ramirez are absent. Vice Chair Armenian
Yes.
and Chair Avedissian.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to,
Next is item 5, report information only at A's fiscal year 2019-2020, CDBG, ESG, and Home Annual Action Plan Substantial Amendment.
Chair Avedissian, members of the CDBG Advisory Committee, we've prepared a PowerPoint for you today to give you an update on the CARES Act funding. I know we keep talking about COVID-19 and CARES Act, but we really want to give you kind of an overview of what has been happening since March 27th. Next slide, please. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, better known as CARES Act, was signed on March 27th, 2020. And this included $5 billion to the CDBG community block grant programs. These are entitlement communities, cities and counties all throughout the United States. In a first rollout, we received, well, the entitlement communities received $2 billion in the first rollout, which meant about $1.175 million for the city of Glendale. There was a second rollout of $1 billion to the states, and we are awaiting the next and possibly third rollout of $2 billion, which is going to be some for the states and some for local governments, but it is also at the discretion of the HUD secretary, and it will most likely be posted at a later time. We had a meeting with HUD last week, and they're saying that it is coming, it's in the pipeline, so we will update you as that comes. Next slide, please. So CARES Act eligible activities. I know that earlier in the PowerPoint, it was determined that it should present the purpose should be prevention, preparation, and response to COVID-19 pandemic. And some of those should be in public service, assistance to businesses, building improvements, planning and capacity building, all related to COVID. Next slide, please. So traditionally, CDBG goes through a program planning schedule to include an advisory committee and public comments like the one we had just presented to you earlier in the report. But due to the time-sensitive nature of COVID, HUD had issued waivers to expedite processes and reducing citizen participation from 30 days to 5 days. Next slide. Next slide, please. The City Council had provided direction on a funding allocation plan and approved the action plan on June 9th, after initially receiving the allocation letter from HUD on April 2nd. The City Council had decided that they were focused on three main determinants: emergency rental assistance, assistance for small businesses, and senior services, senior nutrition, which they all felt that these three were the most important at this time to help with the COVID pandemic and the effects of it in the city of Glendale. Next slide, please. I'd like to also note that the CDBG entitlement cities and counties have also gone in the same direction as we have with emergency rental assistance, small business. They've also done some utility assistance programs and senior services programs. So nationally, this is really the trend. One of the most important is the emergency rental assistance program. Our council wanted to fund $572,500 to assist 380 low-income households affected by COVID-19. These are payments of up to 2 months of $750 a month, and it totals $1,500 for 2 months for. It's a 2-round lottery system that they're doing. The first round was from July 1st through July 15th, with 190 households chosen. The second round will hopefully have another 190. And right now we're currently evaluating those applications, and they're being reviewed currently. Next slide, please. The next program is the Low Income Small Business Grant, which is administered by the Community Development Department's Economic Development. This is going to assist up to 114 small Glendale businesses with up to $5,000 to use towards payroll, rent, mortgage, or other business expenses they might incur. This program serves as a layoff aversion to businesses with less than 25 employees, in which at least 51% of the employees must be low to moderate income. A lottery was conducted from July 1st through the 15th on this program, and applications are currently being reviewed and approved. Next slide, please. And lastly, $30,000 was allocated to the Community Services and Parks Senior Nutrition Program, and to assist with senior and meal-related services. Staff purchased 4 double-door freezers to keep up with the demand of the meal service, which has quadrupled since the COVID pandemic. We're also providing an emergency cooling fan assistance program, allowing seniors to receive a fan for their homes during the hot summer months while they practice safer at home orders by the state. 500 fans were purchased and half have already been distributed to seniors all throughout Glendale. Next slide, please. City agencies are responsible for program oversight just like our community agencies are. Our program issued memorandums of understanding with our Community Development Department and is working with our Community Development staff to ensure all the documents are submitted, to include quarterly reports and required forms. We are reviewing all of the businesses, the households, and the senior services programs quite intensely because CARES Act funding is very separate from the CDBG funding, but we are using the same processes for that as recommended by HUD. This concludes my presentation on the CARES Act. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Committee members? If
No questions.
No question.
no questions. I have one question. Just want to make sure, and I guess I want to reiterate that the funds that we have received as of now, the 1.175, none of that fund, any of the dollars have gone to the city or to the staff, employees, or anything, or management cost. It's everything directly going to the public, to the residents and the community, correct?
Chair Avedisian, members of the CDBG Advisory Committee, that is correct. 100% went to public social services programs. 0 went to program administration or to CIP projects because it had to be done in such a quick nature that it was approved in June and it's already being implemented now. And I believe we're going to have the first rollout of checks going out to businesses most likely in the next 2 weeks. So it is a very quick turnaround.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the report. It was a great report, very detailed.
There's one question, Chair Avedisian.
Go ahead, Mr. Armenian.
Any anecdotal or otherwise feedback about the effectiveness of the programs that the city engaged in?
I could say this, Vice Chair Armenian, we are reviewing as staff, we're reviewing these applications as they come in as a second set of eyes. And I can tell you that we were expecting businesses with larger employees, like a larger group of employees, but it seems to be these mom and pop businesses who are really struggling. Nail salons, gift shop owners, barber shops. And we're kind of excited to be able to assist them because these are owners that cannot, they're not able to apply for the PPP. They're not applying for small business loans. They're struggling. So it is nice to see how the city is going to be able to help them through these CDBG-CV funds. I hope that.
Thank you.
And these funds are all grants, correct? They're not loans.
These are all grants. They are not, you do not have to pay them back.
Thank you. Thank you. If no other question, we move on to our next item. In 5B.
Next is 5B, COVID-19 operations update.
Thank you, Iris. Chair Avedisian, members of the committee, staff has prepared a report to update the committee on the COVID-19 pandemic related to staff and CDBG programs. On March 13th, the City of Glendale began closing our facilities based on LA County directives to avoid gatherings. By March 23rd, all non-essential staff transitioned to working from home. Currently, city staff are working staggered work schedules to ensure physical distancing. CDBG staff work out of the Adult Recreation Center and work out of their respective offices. In regards to our fiscal year 2019-2020 public social services programs, the unit began taking proactive steps in mid-March to continue providing services to the public by working with our agencies to alter their service delivery methods. So staff had assisted 12 of our agencies and programs to introduce this alternate services delivery plan on March 31st. So each agency was tasked with providing the unit with how they were going to continue services during the COVID-19 pandemic. Eric Adamian, our community services specialist, has prepared a PowerPoint presentation for the year-end performance of our CDBG public social services programs. which also includes a COVID-19 plan. So we can give you kind of to show you and demonstrate what the goals and outcomes were for our agencies and what they did in the last 3 months of their program year during that COVID. So again, I'm going to turn the next report over to Eric. Iris, if I can we read the next item, which is 5C, into the record, and he's going to go ahead and continue with the next report.
Absolutely. That's 5C, Summary of Performance for Fiscal Year 2019-20 CDBG Social Service Programs.
Thank you. Eric?
Good afternoon, Chair Avdisian and committee members. I'm here to present the CDBG year-end Public Social Services Performance and Expenditure Rates Report. Next slides, please. The Armenian Relief Society Community Outreach Project, proposed number to be served was 130. The agency surpassed this by serving 134 clients year to date. The agency was also successful in spending down 100% of their funds, in total of $57,500. The outcomes and goals for fiscal year 2019-2020, 85 senior citizens have enrolled in ESL classes and completed the 20-week curriculum. Their original goal was 81. The second outcome was 12 clients have received job search assistance, employment referrals, secured permanent full or part-time employment above minimum wage, and the original goals was 12. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 plan for the Armenian Relief Society's Community Outreach Project, the alternative service delivery method, includes classes were suspended and offices closed to the general public the week of March 16. Program was restricted with instruction being conducted via telephone conferencing for ESL and life skills classes. Food bank distribution was implemented to help clients practicing safe at-home orders. Armenian Relief Society continues to reassess the situation and will continue to provide altered services. Employment services continue to be provided through telephone support as well. Next slide, please. The Housing Rights Center's Fair Housing Program, proposed number to be served was 500. Actual number served was 350. The agency was able to spend down 100% of their funds, 10,000 of which was awarded by CDBG, and the other 10,000, I would like to make note, was awarded by the Community Development Department's Housing Division, and they were successful in spending down all of their funds. The outcomes and goals for fiscal year 2019 and 2020 for the Housing Rights Center, 22 workshops were offered. The original goal was 2. In October 23rd of 2019, there was 1 on-site presentation, and the second on-site presentation was due in April. However, due to COVID-19, there was a shift in events. Instead, the agency was able to provide 21 virtual workshops to the community members. Also, their second outcome and goal was to perform to Glendale residents assisted in filing fair housing complaints. And next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for the Housing Rights Center, the Fair Housing Program, included as of March 16, 2020, Housing Rights Center took precautions to no longer accept walk-in clients in the office. All public workshops and presentations have been altered. New services included landlord-tenant counseling hotline, virtual walk-in clinics, and virtual workshops. Glendale residents are encouraged to contact Housing Rights Center with questions via phone or email, visit their website, or visit them on social media. Complaint cases are handled remotely. If you take a look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the weekly virtual services that the Housing Rights Center is also providing. On Mondays, they offer Facebook Live Q&As, Tuesdays, Housing Rights workshop, Wednesdays, virtual walk-in clinics. Thursday, it was divided between virtual walk-in clinics and housing rights workshops as well. And Fridays, it was virtual walk-in clinics and special webinar. Next slide, please. The Catholic Charities Homeless Prevention Loaves and Fishes Program, proposed number to be served was 60. The agency was able to serve 92 households, and they were also successful in spending down all of the $82,000 that was awarded to them. The outcomes and goals for fiscal year 1920 for Catholic Charities: 92 households received aid in the form of goods from the food pantry, rental assistance, utility assistance within 3 months of entering the program. The original goal to be served was 30. The second outcome and goal was 24 households maintained an active link to auxiliary, health, mental health, employment, and legal services. The original goal to be served was 12. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 plan for Catholic Charities Loaves and Fishes program included clients seeking rental utilities assistance received paperwork via email correspondence. Clients were allowed one in-office appointment to sign formal documents and drop off necessary documentations. Due to limited services, Catholic Charities of Los Angeles reduced the amount of referrals. However, additional requests for food pantry services was made available. Next slide, please. Asencia's homeless outreach case management. Proposed number served was 60. The agency met that number as well. Funds awarded was $10,000. The agency spent down 100% of their grant. The outcomes and goals for fiscal year 1920 included 47 individuals were contacted by homeless outreach case management and enrolled in Asencia's Access Center by June 30th, 2020. The goal for the year was 39. Next, 38 individuals enrolled in Access Centers have accessed mainstream resources such as food stamps, job training, employment, substance abuse treatment, and health care by June 30th, 20. The original goal was 20. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for Asencia's homeless outreach case management. Asencia suspended street outreach to new clients to reassess the program services the week of March 16. The agency provided their employees with personal protective equipment. Program resumed services in April to enrolled homeless clients and new clients as well. Asencia staff began picking up daily brown bag lunches from the city's senior nutrition program located at the Adult Recreation Center to hand out to homeless persons on the streets of Glendale. Program provided information, referral to shelter programs, hotel programs, shower programs, and food pantries as well. Next slide, please. Glendale Youth Alliance Youth Employment Program. Proposed number served was 40. The actual number served was 36. Funds awarded, $37,000, and the agency was successful in spending down 100% of the grant. The outcomes and goals for fiscal year 1920, 36 youth served in Glendale Youth Alliance have earned income by working a minimum of 100 hours each in a part-time job. The goal was 36. Also, 36 youth were assessed for health needs, counseling, and supportive services. The goal was 40. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for GYS Youth Employment Program. As of March 16, 2020, the Glendale Youth Alliance offices were closed to the public and the program stopped accepting walk-in clients. All GYF program meetings and trainings were canceled and virtual trainings were put into place. Hotel vouchers to homeless youth, rental eviction information, unemployment insurance guidance was provided. Program is in collaboration with various city departments to schedule small jobs. The program has youth placed in work sites with small teams of under 10 employees for the upcoming fiscal year 2020-2021 program year. Next slide, please. The Salvation Army The Zone program. Proposed number to be served was 50. The agency met that number, and they were also very close to successfully spending down all of their funds to $28,397. The outcomes and goals for fiscal year 1920, 37 students were regular attendees of the Zone program. Original goal was 25. Also, 17 students completed life skills classes offered through the EVER5 program and improved reading by the end of the year. Original goal was 13. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for Salvation Army The Zone program. Program closed for 2 weeks beginning March 12, 2020 to conduct thorough cleaning of classrooms. equipment, and shared areas. The agency began to offer remote learning for youth whose families wanted to continue learning using the online access programs. Tutoring was made available using Zoom 5 days a week, 3 hours a day. Students received craft activities to complete while at home. For fiscal year 2020-2021, Salvation Army is offering morning and afternoon childcare to help families dealing with GUSD closure until the district reassesses the plan to return to the classroom in October 2020. Next slide, please. Committee for Armenian Students in Public Schools, Intervention, Prevention, Clinical Group Counseling. Proposed number to be served was 84. Actual number served was 47. The agency was able to spend down full $48,000 for the fiscal year 1920. The outcomes for included 38 students served in the program showed significantly reduced incidence of aggressive behavior by June 30th, 2020. The goal was 60. Also, 39 students served in the program have shown improvement in following directions and academic responsibility. The goal for fiscal year 1920 was 60. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for CAS, Intervention, Prevention, Clinical Group Counseling. CAS services are offered at 3 GUSD elementary schools, and the program had to cease on-site services beginning March 16, 2020. CAS worked with GUSD school administrators to continue services to currently enrolled students using alternative platforms such as telephone and online services. Program will continue to serve the same students in fiscal year 2020-2021 until allowed to return to traditional classroom instructions. Students enrolled in the program continue to receive virtual therapy on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. Door of Hope after school program. Proposed number to be served was 17. Actual number served was 21. The agency was successful in spending down 100% of the $19,000 that was awarded to them. Outcomes and goals for fiscal year 19 and 20. 15 children and teens demonstrated an improvement in educational outcomes. The original goal was 13. Next, 16 children and teens demonstrated an improvement in behavioral outcomes. The original goal was 13. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for Door of Hope's after-school program. Door of Hope canceled all children's activities, life skills, classes, and evening programs the week of March 16. Door of Hope reduced the number of staff working at its undisclosed site to contain the spread of COVID-19. All services are now being coordinated via telephone and computer. In fiscal year 2020-2021, Door of Hope will continue to offer homework help and after-school tutoring via Zoom, but will transition back to traditional CDBG contract obligation once restrictions are lifted. Door of Hope provides ongoing resources to parents and families, including online homeschooling resources and recreational activities. Next slide, please. Ometman Sean Chapter, we got skills program. Proposed number to be served was 30. Actual number served was 12. The agency was able to spend down nearly 44% of the funds expended. It was a total of $11,500 that was expended to them. Outcomes for fiscal year 1920 included 12 youth participants were able to use proper basketball motor skills, dribbling, passing, and shooting. The agency met that goal. 11 youth participants were able to elevate their basketball IQ to be able to understand the game and how to work within a team setting. And the original goal was 21. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for Ometman Sean Chapter. We got skills program. The program entering the second session in spring 2020 when COVID-19 pandemic closures were activated. The program is offered at the City of Glendale's Pacific Park Community Center. City closed all facilities, parks, and permitted rentals on March 16, thus leaving this program without a location to continue operations. This program was unable to provide an alternative service delivery plan due to all organizational activities ceasing entirely at Ometman Sean Chapter. Due to the closure of the Pacific Community Center, the program was able to was unable to continue the services to the youth. Next slide, please. Armenian Cultural Association Hamaskain Intergenerational Experiences. Proposed number to be served was 30. The agency surpassed that number by serving 47. The agency also was very close to spending all of their funds. The total funds awarded was $11,500. The outcomes and goals for fiscal year 1920 included 25 students attended at least 24 classes available in the curriculum. Goal was 21. 25 students graduated the program year ending June 30th, 2020, and the goal was again 21. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for Hamaskain Intergenerational Experiences. Hamaskain canceled all after-school classes the week of March 16, began conducting classes via Zoom until the end of its fiscal year 1920 obligations. Program will continue to provide virtual classes in fiscal year 2021. Agency will assess the situation and transfer back to the traditional program upon word from LA County Public Health orders. Program shifted to an online platform and continued to provide its classes and curriculum. At the end of the school year, students were evaluated on their performances and artwork completed throughout online platforms. Next slide, please. Family Promise of the Verdugos Housing Support Program. Proposed number to be served was 30. Actual number served was also 30. Funds awarded was $11,000. The agency was successful in expending 100% of the grant. Outcomes and goals: 30 individuals were enrolled into crisis housing within 30 days of connecting to Family Promise of the Verdugos. The original goal was 15. 14 individuals were served within, 14 individuals served were transitioned into housing within 12 months. Original goal was 15. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan for Family Promise of the Verdugos Housing Support Program. Family Promise did not have any altered services for the housing support. The agency mandated personal protective equipment for its staff. Program continued to provide traditional essential services of placing families in crisis housing and eventually permanent housing, and will continue to do so in fiscal year 2020-21. Agency linked with other community organizations due to the high demand for requests to provide assistance to the homeless population. Next slide, please. Armenian General Benevolent Union Generation Next program. Proposed number to be served was 30. Actual number served was 20. Funds awarded was 10,000, and the agency was very near to spending down almost 100% of it. Outcomes and goals for fiscal year 19 and 20. 20 students have attended the after-school program and tutoring at least twice a week. Original goal was 18. 20 students have developed positive interpersonal relationships with their peers and participated in at least 5 monthly activities. Original goal was 21. Next slide, please. COVID-19 plan, AGBU Generation Next program. AGBU stopped the on-site after-school Generation Next program located at the YWCA of Glendale the week of March 16. AGBU partnered with Community Services and Parks Youth and Family Section to offer virtual homework support for math and English tutoring. Teens can participate in a virtual classroom and ask for homework help from the tutors provided by AGBU Gen Next. 20 unduplicated teens have participated in twice-a-week tutoring sessions. Participants met online for activities such as group discussions on different topics, workshops on social media and internet safety, healthy eating, and engaging in discussions. Next slide, please. This concludes the CDBG year-end Public Social Services Performance and Expenditure Rates report. Chair Alvetisian, committee members, if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you for this extensive report. It's a lot of information, a lot of details. Actually, I do have one question or concern in regards to some of the organizations that, due to COVID-19, they weren't able to complete their program or continue their program, like the Shant's, Ometmen Shant's Goals program that was completely stopped. So what happens to the balance of those funds? Does they stay? What happens to that? If you have, I don't know.
Chair,
Go ahead.
Chair Avedisian, members of the advisory committee, when funds are not spent, they go back into the city's line of credit and they become unencumbered. So they become unrestricted funds that could be used at a later date and can be secured at a later date. And we usually have a, it's almost like a fund balance that we have, and we use it in case of emergencies.
No, okay, let me understand this correctly. That means funds goes back to a CIP, following year CIP, like we had right now, the funds is returned, type of thing?
Chair Avedisian, members of the committee, similar to that, yes. So when they are not spent down, they go back to the line of credit, but they can only be used for CIP projects in future
Or social,
fiscal
whichever
years.
it is.
Well, not social. It can only be used for CIP projects in future years.
I see. Whatever the funds came back from.
Right. Regardless if they come back for public social services CIP or even program administration, they all go to CIP.
Oh, I see.
In future,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
in
I
future
understand.
fiscal years.
Okay, now I understand. All right. That was clear. Thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions?
Yeah, if I could ask a question just to follow on what you asked, just so I'm understanding it. So in the case of the Home and Skills program, those are social service dollars. So if they're unable to spend it and it goes back, you're saying, Ms. Kovarian, that it goes back into the capital program?
Vice Chair Armenian, that is correct. It goes back into the city's line of credit, but can only be used for capital projects because there are caps. There's a 15% cap on public social services and a 20% cap on program administration. So it cannot go to program administration, nor can it go to public social services. It can only go to CIP, which has no cap.
I see. Okay. So in essence, it ends up being reprogrammed from social service dollars into capital dollars.
Correct.
Okay. My next question had to do is kind of a broader question. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It's very informative. But a general question came up as I was watching and reading the presentation. Some of the constituencies that these organizations are populations that these organizations are trying to serve, for example, homeless agencies, they are trying to reach homeless individuals in the city. And I noticed, and even if you take let's say a Salvation Army that is trying to provide an after-school program for, youth who are disadvantaged potentially, or low income, certainly. I would imagine in all those populations, there are technology challenges, access to technology, kind of digital divide kind of questions where, people might not have internet, they might not have computers. In one case, I think on one of the homeless programs, it was saying, I think it was Catholic Charities saying it was, kind of delivering documentation by email to individuals. What is staff's assessment on whether or not, because most of the organizations are saying, well, in March, we went from like in person to, virtual, but many of those populations don't have access to the tools in order to do virtual. Are there things, or were there digital access capabilities that were provided somehow to these populations in order to continue the programs, or is it the fact that they serve their populations, the majority of the population that they served them prior to mid-March when things went virtual?
Vice Chair Armenian, that's a really good question that you're asking, because this is exactly what we ran into due to this COVID pandemic. Originally, I think the agencies had pretty much tried to quickly figure out what they were going to do because it was the last 3 months of the program year, and great work done by the staff to try and get them to come up with a plan. Luckily, because Salvation Army already has inventory and has purchased inventory through CDBG dollars, that we knew that they had the capacity to do so. With other agencies, they had not yet reached out because, again, it's all new territory. We received word actually just 2 weeks ago from HUD approving inventory purchases such as laptops for use for this particular reason, for public social services. So now we have the green light. We know that we are able to purchase these items, and I shouldn't say it's good news, but these items, of course, we need to keep track of the inventory. Keeping track of inventory can be daunting for some agencies, but because technology has depreciation, they depreciate very quickly, I think we are going to encourage agencies to consider possibly using that as one of their budgetary items in this next RFP that's going to come out hopefully tomorrow. And so I hope that answers your question. We are encouraging them. We have worked with 2 agencies who actually inquired about the purchase of technology. We haven't delved in deep into the use of Wi-Fi and whatnot. That we haven't talked about. We haven't really had an issue with it. Agencies haven't reached out to us about that as a concern. But yes, laptops and technology equipment is definitely something that we are able to purchase with CDBG dollars, and not just for CARES Act, but with CDBG dollars. It's an allowed cost.
That's a good point in terms of, so we should not be surprised if for the reprogram dollars or the return dollars from YWCA that we might get proposals on just technology capital investment so that these organizations can do their programs, continue to do their programs in this virtual environment. But I think that that does raise questions about that we'll have to answer in the future about how do you keep track of equipment and that sort of thing so it doesn't just disappear. I frankly, this is just more of a comment. I was just kind of surprised at how much I was expecting more organizations to report out like the Untitled Chapter did, which is, hey, we weren't able to do everything, but it seemed like the majority were all able to deliver upon their promises, and I find that pleasantly surprising that they were able to continue reaching these populations that do have some of these, technology access, communication access challenges. So I found that pleasantly surprising. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sir Garibian, go ahead. Your mic is.
I don't have those. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I couldn't see, I don't have those slides, but I see the Excel sheet or whatever it is that has the details on it. And obviously some of it's not more of a question, more of I'm trying to understand. Some might say total of numbers served past 100%. And only 2 or 3 of them may be that they're low. Actually, only one is 56%, which is cash. So, but the ones that 100% plus, back to Commissioner Armenian was just mentioning, these were, again, went through the slides pretty fast. Some were done through Zoom, or like for example, Salvation Army's after-school program. Was that a Zoom after-school program, or they were physically at the location? And if it was, were they able to serve same amount of number of individuals or kids in this case, even with the COVID distancing and all that stuff? That's the part I'm just curious, how did it work? I mean, didn't it bother them, or they had less than 6 people, a lot of space, everyone 6 feet apart? How did that work?
Chair Grebian, thank you for the question. So in regards to Zoom, in regards to the Zoom online sessions, only the fourth quarter numbers reflect the online meetings. Many of the agencies that were able to basically make the transition, their numbers either stayed consistent to what they were going to serve, or they had already had a very healthy number going into the end of the third quarter of reporting. For Salvation Army, for example, the 2 weeks after March 16th, the agency was actually closed down because they were cleaning the facility and making sure everything was in place. But the agency was able to open back up slowly in terms of using online platforms and also communicating with the parents and the students to provide guidance, what to do, for example, packets to take home or anything of that sort. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, so most of them, because it was before March 16, that's why, but versus the only cap in this case, the 56% use, what happens? So, I mean, this is percent of total served, 56%. That's a low number, isn't it? I don't know what happens to that.
So
Same thing.
committee agreement, basically for CAPS, in their case, since GUSD closed down the campuses, CAPS was not able to recruit any new participants. Therefore, the low numbers served, basically their cutoff point was third quarter. And if we were able to include fourth quarter as well, I'm sure their numbers would have been a little bit more closer to the 100% served. But unfortunately, since GUSC shut down the campuses, CAPS was not able to recruit any new participants.
So they get to keep that money or they need to refund the difference?
Committee Member Garibian, due to obviously highly unprecedented circumstances with COVID-19, we were given direction by HUD to input these numbers as they are, and give an explanation within the software system. And it is understood that we're not alone. This is a national issue, of course, this is an international issue. So what we did was this plan that we put into place with the agencies early on in mid-March really assisted us with getting these numbers in and a good explanation or a kind of a recovery plan on how we're gonna go forward. But to answer your question about this, we are now working in 2020, 2021, we're working with these agencies to either lower their expectations because they know that they are in need of, let's say, Glendale Unified School District, because that's where their clientele are. And they know that if the school district's closed, how are they gonna reach out to new clients? So they are working with administrators, and it's new to everyone, and how are they gonna go about doing, it's not business as usual anymore, it's a very new way of doing things. So to answer your question, HUD understands, as long as we document, which we have, as you can see it in this very comprehensive report and comprehensive PowerPoint, that's how we have basically shown or painted a picture of what has happened in those last 3 months of that fiscal year.
So bottom line, they get to keep the money for now?
Correct.
Okay, that's what my concern is. As long as I want to make sure the money does not, so they keep the money for now due to the emergency of COVID-19
Correct.
situation.
And to go back, they do. They get to keep the money because they're still serving clients. They're just not serving the number that they had wanted to serve. But to go back to, for instance, as an example, Home Minuteman chapter, they had already started to develop their spring 2020 session when COVID hit. So unfortunately, they pay coaches with that money. So no fields, no coaches, there's nothing to reimburse. So they decided that it's not fair there's nothing to bill for. So they just said, okay, this is what it is, and we have to kind of reorganize and figure out what we're going to do. So they let us know early on that that was their decision. So that kind of gives you an idea. The kids were there, the number of kids that they had, if you look at it halfway through, they really did meet their goals in a sense. They did a really good job in the beginning. Unfortunately, with COVID, it really did affect the second half of their performance.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Caribbean, Mr. Damian, for your report. It was great.
Can I ask a clarifying question from the question that Mr. Garibian asked? So
Sure,
going
go
back
ahead.
to Home Minuteman skills, so are you saying that That's one of the examples where they couldn't convert to anything other than in person, and so they fell short. So did they still get the full amount that they had applied for?
Vice Chair Armenian, they did not bill, they were unable to bill us because they didn't have a location
Right.
to do their program,
Right.
and they didn't have coaches anymore because they couldn't socially distance and do the program. So unfortunately, they did not bill us for the second half of that fiscal year.
Okay, and so that balance remains, so that left a balance remaining in terms of what we had allocated in terms of funding, correct?
And that goes back
And
into
so-
the line of credit.
That goes back to line of credit, which can only be used for capital programs next year.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we have a total so far?
What we can do is, in October, we will get you a funding allocation plan. And in the funding allocation plan, we will show you a fund balance. And I don't want to give out numbers yet, but it's relatively about $30,000 or $40,000 right now in a fund balance that we have. It's all dependent when we close the books each year. And we'll get you those numbers, but we try not to allocate, or we try not to use that in RFP funds. We try to hold back. It's just a safe bet to hold on to just in case of an emergency where something is needed immediately for a CIP project.
For 2020?
2021, correct, 2021, 2022. It's more of a slush fund in a sense to help communities or agencies, something that can go wrong.
So on top of the 219,000 if it doesn't get.
Correct.
Chair
And the
Avedisian.
regular amount of funding.
Right.
And the regular, yes, allocation.
Chair
Go ahead.
Avedisian, members of the committee, as it relates to 1920, the only agency that essentially didn't fully spend their money is the Shant chapter for home amendment. So everybody else fully expended, for the most part. There might be a couple dollars here and there remaining, but fully expended their funds. So the amount that Ms. Kavarian's also referring to is from prior years. So it's not fully 1920 funds that were not expended. As it relates to the 1920 reporting program year, it looks like everybody but the Home and Amend Shant chapter fully expended their funds. As Ms. Kavarian stated, we will be bringing back a report in October which also summarizes the changes in the services that the agencies are providing as it relates to the 2021 program year. As you know, a couple months ago, you allocated funds for these similar agencies for similar programs for this next reporting year. July and now August, for 2 full months, things have still been closed. So this current program year has to be revised as well as it relates to the services provided and the goals and outcomes. So once we have all of that finalized, we'll also bring a report in October as it relates to the modifications. And you, as the committee, could ask, if the agency is here, and we can also ask them to tune in. If you have any specific questions on the service delivery and what it means, we can ask them to be available to answer your questions. I know, Vice Chair Armenian, you were asking some questions, and we may not know the specifics of the challenges. There might have been challenges, but they didn't communicate that to us, and they may have addressed it a certain way. So we'll make sure to ask them to be available when we bring the October report, to tune in and be available to answer questions should you have specific questions as it relates to the modified services that they'll be offering for this current program year. Because as you make decisions for the additional funds, the 219,000 through the RFP, you may have questions about what that means in relation to the current program that's funded. So we'll make sure to ask them to be on to answer those questions for you.
Okay.
And when you say modifications that we might want to consider, I think what you're referring to is in terms of the next RFP process, not this one for the 219, but the regular cycle. Given that we may likely still be in this COVID environment, we just don't know, so we have to assume. that we could modify the RFP process to ask organizations to, let's say, outline how they intend to provide services with the COVID environment in mind. Am I understanding that correctly?
Vice Chair Armenian, no. I mean, the 219,000 that in the report, the reprogramming of the YWCA funds. So we're going to issue an RFP for those funds, correct? So you might have some of these agencies that apply for expanded services as it relates to COVID-19. But for example, if you've got a Salvation Army, let's say, that's providing, I believe they're the ones providing after school program.
Yes.
So if they need laptops, for example, for their after school program, they might apply for funds to be able to purchase those laptops in order to continue providing those programs virtually. So some of the programs that you might, the program proposals that you might see submitted for the 219,000 might include expansion of currently funded programs that you have funded in the 2021 fiscal year, or it could be a new program related to COVID that an agency has, for example, and this is far-fetched, but let's say the Home and Mention chapter decided to do something else instead of the We Got Skills program, if they were funded. So you might see them submit a proposal for additional funds for this other program. So some of those you might have questions as it relates to whether it's the expanded services or the modification of the 2021 program services that they're going to be able to provide. So just like Mr. Adamian reported on the public social services, the modifications that they made for the 1920 program year, we are doing a similar assessment for the 2021 program year. Whereas the 1920 impact was in the last quarter, in the 2021 program year, it might be the whole year. So we really don't know what we're looking at. And so we want to make sure that one, they have a good grasp on what that program is going to look like, the modified version, and that we have a good understanding as to what it looks like. For example, if for CASPs, if the schools are not open, how are they going to serve the children? How are they going to identify the children that are going to be in their program? Do they have a plan working with the school district, and how is that going to work? So these are questions that we still need answer if this is going to be a full year versus 1 quarter. So going into 2021, we want to make sure that we have a better understanding of that modified program service that they will be providing, and make sure that you as a committee are also comfortable with those modifications that these agencies are proposing, because you may not think that that's the best use of the funds. So it will give you an opportunity to ask these questions and ask for, modifications should you wish to, if you don't feel that this is the best way to spend the 2021 funds. So there'll be a little bit more of that discussion possibly at the October meeting.
Right, but I guess I was skipping ahead. Depending on what we find out in this next couple of meetings, if you will, we can build into our process, our evaluation process, more formally how we assess the capacity and capability of future applicants to deliver their services, with the assumption that the COVID situation is still with us into the next funding cycle.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No other questions? We move on to our next item. Item D, 5D.
Yes, 5D is status of active year-to-date CDBG capital improvement projects.
Chair Avedissian, members of the CDBG Advisory Committee, I want to introduce to you a new member of our CDBG team. Tamar Kabanjan comes to us from the private sector. Tamar studied architecture at Woodbury University and has over 7 years of technical knowledge related to capital improvement, and has been working within our unit since April. We welcome Tamar to present the update on our current CIP projects. Tamar?
Good afternoon, Chair Avedissian and committee members. CDBG staff has prepared a brief report for city and community capital improvement projects, fiscal year 2020 to 2021. There are several fundings from previous years and CDBG funds for each project. The first one is Pacific Park Playground and Pool Shade Structure Improvement Project. General Fund and CDBG Fund is a total of $313,293. This project is sponsored by the Community Service and Parks Department and involves installation permanent shade structure at 2 playground areas at Pacific Park and 1 or 2 shade structures next to the Pacific Park swimming pool deck area. The project is currently in plan check with 85% construction drawings completed. The project is expected to be completed in July 2021. The next one is Pacific Park Splash Pad Project. Special revenue funds and CDBG funding is total of $734,000. This project is sponsored by the Community Service and Parks Department and involves replacing the 14-year-old damaged existing splash pad, water feature with a new 10 to 20% larger scale splash pad and additional amenities. The project is currently in plan check with 85% construction drawings completed. The project is expected to be completed in July 2021. The city looks at the two projects of the Pacific Park as one. Next is Pacific Park Artificial Turf Multipurpose Field Project. Development impact and CDBG funding is a total of $1,840,000. Pacific Park Artificial Turf Project will convert the existing natural turf baseball field to a multi-purpose artificial turf field. The field is heavily used on a daily basis. The existing field is used for baseball and soccer league play, as well as general public use, which reduces numerous areas of the outfield to dirt. The project is currently in plan check with 90% construction drawings completed. The project is expected to be completed in December 2021. Next is Palanconi Park Playground and Shade Structure Project. CDBG funding is a total of $494,966. The current playground at Palanconi Park is 20 years old. The project includes a new playground that will enhance the play elements by providing a play area for children. The design will incorporate swing base for kids, along with a shade structure to allow for play during hot summer months, as well as general public use, which reduces numerous areas of the outfield to dirt. The project has completed design phase and is entering bidding phase. The project is expected to be completed in December 2021. The next portion of the list is community CIP projects. Glendale Community Center Roofing Project, Catholic Charities of Los Angeles. Catholic Charities is a 6,658 square feet building and a 1-story concrete block building. The structure was rebuilt in 1995 to serve the low-income population in southern Glendale. The same building, Catholic Charities, has 2 portions of the building. The first portion includes the installation of a new roof to include polyfresco cool torch for entire roof, installation of metal flashing for vents and AC units, and demo and removal of existing roof, replacement of 100 existing interior fluorescent light fixtures with newer energy-efficient LED lighting. The project is currently in planning department for environmental review. While agency is completing contract agreement documents, the project is expected to be completed in December 2021. The second project on the same building is, it includes on exterior as well as interior. Exterior work will include the following: painting the envelope of the existing building, including rooftop, existing screens, fence, gates, and metal railings. Demolition of the existing entrance ramp to replace with a new ADA compliant ramp, an electronic parking lot gate, new front entrance gates, handrails, and curbs. Installation of drought-tolerant landscaping and irrigation systems in the front and side exterior of the building. Interior work will include the following: painting the interior walls and doors of the existing building, removal and replacement of existing break room cabinets, repair and repaint of the existing walls located in the break room area, and replacement of break room counters and sinks. Installation of new vinyl composition flooring throughout 5,000 square feet of floor area. Installation of metal shelving for food supplies located in the Loaves and Fishes food pantry. Installation of a security camera system in the exterior as well as interior of the building. The project is currently in design phase. The project is expected to be completed in December 2021 in conjunction with the roofing project. Next is roofing project Home at Men, Ararat Main Campus. The project was approved back in February. It's a total of $193,270. The scope of work includes the following. The project includes removal, reinstallation of CDBG-funded solar PV, clean and prep existing roof, and apply new polyurethane spray foam roofing. The project is currently with Planning Department for environmental review while the agency is completing contract agreement documents. The facility has been closed since March 16, 2020 due to COVID-19 pandemic. The project is expected to be completed in December 2021. The next was Lexington Building Facility Improvement Project, YWCA of Glendale, that was mentioned earlier. The returns of the awarded funding was July 28, 2020, stated the scope of the work has changed. Next is HVAC project Home Admin Ararat Main Campus, $95,113 is a grand total. The existing HVAC units installed in the building are over 20 years old and have been repaired several times previously. Because of the estimated cost of repairing the current HVAC units are higher than replacing of the HVAC units itself, the scope of the work for this project is replacing all 9 HVAC units. The project is in the environmental phase and awaiting drawings for agency project manager to proceed. Facility has been closed since March 16, 2020 due to COVID-19 pandemic. The project is expected to be completed in June 2021. Next is Bleachers Project Home Admin Ararat Main Campus. A grand total is $60,638. The building includes offices, 2 basketball, volleyball courts, gymnastics, and martial arts, serving approximately 2,400 members annually. The existing bleachers are over 30 years old that needs to be replaced. And the scope of the work for this project includes replacing and installing bleachers to the main campus facility. The bleachers will be custom, motorized, retractable bleachers. The project is an environmental review while the agency is completing agreement documents. The project is in the environmental phase and awaiting drawings for agency project manager to proceed. Facility has been closed since March 16, 2020 due to COVID-19 pandemic. The project is expected to be completed by June 2021. Next is solar panel project Armenian Cultural Foundation. The grand total is $219,537. The work includes the installation of commercial solar system in the parking lot. On March 31, 2020, agency was given permission to sole source the project due to 2 attempted good faith efforts to find a qualified contract, the highly specialized nature of the project, and the current COVID-19 pandemic. The agency is working to finalize an agreement with the general contractor and will enter construction phase in early fall 2020. Glendale Water and Power interconnection agreement, building and safety permits, and planning have all approved and finalized documents. Project is on track and is projected to be completed on or before December 31, 2020. Next is Windows Project Adventist Health Glendale. $65,000 is the grant. The project is sponsored by Adventist Health Glendale for the following scope of work: replacing 4 existing windows, including demolition, and replacing windows with Douglas fir, premium wood windows, dual pane insulated glass. The proposed window project renovation allows draft-free, well-lit facility supporting full-time senior health promotion services and community health events. The existing windows are original to the building, dating back to 1926. Project is proposed to serve 800 unduplicated individuals. SHUPO environmental review is approved and agency has finalized contract agreement. Note on the staff of Adventist Health, project manager retired in spring 2020, and due to COVID-19 restrictions at the hospital, the project is currently awaiting approval to begin construction. Project completion date is pending COVID-19 clearance, anticipated completion date in June 30, 2021. Last but not least, gym divider project main campus, Home Admin Ararat. Grand total is $26,287. The gym is one of the primary facility used for basketball, volleyball, and interior soccer. The project is sponsored by Home Admin Glendale Untitled Chapter to install 1 motorized athletic gym divider curtain with electronic connections for the motorized divider that will allow additional practice for youth. The project is in the process of obtaining approval of the plans for the gym divider curtain from the City of Los Angeles Building and Safety. Once permit is obtained, contractor is ready to begin project and anticipates completion by December 31, 2020. All materials have been purchased and paid for and are on site. This concludes our CDBG capital improvement projects and community project list. Please let me know if you have questions.
Thank you very much for the detailed report. I don't have any questions, just want to say welcome. Welcome to city, welcome to the committee. I'm sure we're gonna all benefit from your services. Any questions from the committee members?
I don't have a question, but I want to welcome Tamar. Great job. You did a fantastic report. Welcome to the board.
Yeah, likewise. Welcome. I just have one question out of all. I mean,
I would be surprised.
made a lot of information, obviously it was in the report. Are there any of these that really stick out in terms of that worry you out of any of them? Or because I know some of them, have had trouble, for example, in spending some of the money or like a contractor issue or that sort of thing. Are there any that worry you, or do you think they all are or will soon be on track?
Vice Chair Armenian, I can answer that question. They are all on track. Unfortunately, we should have probably done a slideshow for capital improvement as well with a COVID plan, because unfortunately, due to COVID, many of these facilities have been closed. And a good example would be Adventist Health Medical Center. Because the building that we are going to be working on, they're getting their project in ready to go, and here comes COVID, and we're not allowed to have any staff or construction crew anywhere near the hospital because it's shut down to the public. So that's an example of how a project gets stalled. Untitled Chapter is another good example. Material is sitting in their gym right now waiting to be hung basically for the gym divider project, but yet the facility is closed, no one can go in, and they're awaiting permits from City of Los Angeles, who, due to COVID, things are slowed down. So we're hopeful that once this pandemic is past us, all of these projects are ready to go. The staff is ready, and I know that the project managers are ready in their respective agencies. There was a lot of turnover with all the agencies. Catholic Charities lost staff, Adventist Health lost staff to retirement, and Untitled Chapter lost a staff member to retirement. So again, a lot of these are factors before COVID as well. But yes, we are on track. We're not concerned about anyone giving money back at this point. We know that the solar panel project is probably the next one to start. They're just finalizing what they need to with their general contractor, getting their AIA agreements done. So that's the one that we're awaiting, as well as the Adventist Health, because they're just getting clearance for the construction people to start working on site again. Hope that answers.
Because I would say that, two thoughts. One is, anything that's capital in terms of like infrastructure kind of thing, now is actually the best time to do it when the facilities aren't being used.
Right.
To get it done. Just like, I think, cities are looking at pavement projects and road repair projects as now is the time to do it. But the second thought is, the COVID situation is not going to go away anytime soon. And so I think that us, again, as we look at both the expenditures and keeping current programs on track as well as the future programs, I think we're going to have to keep an eye on, how within the COVID environment can these organizations try and move the ball down the field on their projects so that they get them done. Because the situation, I do not foresee that the situation is going to change anytime soon for them to wait around. So I think we're just going to have to keep an eye on that, both in terms of organizational capacity, like you said, because of staff turnover, et cetera, as well as ability to, get the contractors into the facilities to do whatever work needs to be done while those facilities are not being used. Now would be the time to get it done.
Correct. And and just to add this as a staff recommendation, a possible question when we look at fiscal year 2021-2022, a good question would be, do they have a dedicated project manager? A lot of these organizations are 100% volunteer-led, and they have dedicated volunteers, but unfortunately we've noticed due to COVID again, these volunteers are just stretched so thin as it is. And they were stretched thin before, and now it seems that this is where the deficits are, and we're seeing it. So the question would be, they really should consider having a dedicated project manager on that. So at least from the staff point of view, we could deal with that one-point person and really push their projects through. And it really, honestly, it helps them, the community, and everyone that they serve.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara, again. Welcome. We move on to our next item, item 6.
Item 6 is committee staff comments.
Okay. Any comments from the committee members? No? We'll go to staff. Staff, any comments? Ms. Clavian?
We, Chair Avedissian, members of the committee, we just wanted to advertise 2 of our flyers. The first one being the virtual CDBG open house. I'm going to have Eric go ahead and post that up there. On September 9th, we are going to be hosting our very first virtual CDBG open house at 11 a.m. Today is the deadline to RSVP. We invite nonprofits to come and learn about CDBG, and hopefully they'll look into federal funding in fiscal year 2021-2022. The other flyer we have ready for you, and it's up and running, is our community meeting. This year, our community meeting is going to be held very differently than in previous years. We have option of 3 platforms to give feedback as a neighbor. Citizen feedback is a very important part of the process, and we have the option of virtual public meeting, email, or telephone conference calls. So we invite the public to take a look at this flyer, and it has all the dates available in the first week of October to participate in a community meeting. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just a clarification. The flyers would go out to public via emails or mailers. How do they reach and how do they find out about it?
Our mailer, our flyers go out into our CSP newsletter, City Connections, citywide. It goes out in email form. I think I've covered all of them. Oh, social media, of course. We have social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So it does go out to the public.
All right.
Using
Thank you
those
very much.
platforms.
I don't have any comments. Just thank you, the staff. Due to all this COVID, you guys have been nonstop working, whether it was virtually or in the office, in person. You guys have been on top of the game, so-called. You've done an awesome job and got us to this point with all these reports and everything. Looking forward for the RFP and to the next meeting. With that, if there is no other questions or comments from the committee members, I call for the adjournment.
Yeah, just a thank you for everything you're doing. Just to echo Chair Avedissian's words. Thanks for everything and trying to keep everything on track. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, staff, for your hard work, especially this COVID situation. So I appreciate it. And our Chair Avedissian risking his life by being here. So stay safe.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe, and we're adjourned at 4.